Hi there, I'm the Mythkeeper. Welcome back to my channel, the best place on the internet for Pathfinder lore and history. If you like this kind of content, be sure to like and subscribe. And if there's anything in particular that you'd like me to talk about, let me know in the comments below. I read all the comments and I love getting them. This week, we're doing another video in my religion series. In previous videos in this series, I've talked about devils and demons. Well, this time we're going to talk about some of the less known outsider types. We're talking about Asuras, Divs, and Qlippoths. Enjoy. In my first video, I looked at devils of hell. In my second video, I took a look at the demons of Abaddon. And in my third video, I took a look at the demons of the abyss. But demons and devils aren't the only fiendish entities to reside in the outer planes. Alongside the devils of hell, there are the Asuras. In the apocalyptic wastelands of Abaddon, one can also find the Divs. Finally, the native entities that resided in the abyss long before the first abyssal demons formed were called the Qlippoths. In this video, I'm going to discuss all three of these fiendish creature types. Just like demons and devils, Asuras, Divs, and Qlippoths are post-mortal life forms, made of the raw quintessence of the plane they hail from. Just like demons and devils, they are irreversibly evil. In all three cases, they represent a minority life form in their respective corner of the hells, so I'll take a minute with each of them to discuss what has led to this current state of affairs. Finally, as with most post-mortal life forms I cover in my religion series, the most powerful of these creatures are divine entities. Demigods are gods with mortal worshippers and the ability to confer divine magic to their clerics. For each of these creature types, I'll cover the known divinities as well. Asuras. Asuras are said to have been the result of a divine mishap, abominations brought to life through errors committed by some long-dead progenitor deity. According to the Asuras, they managed to survive the wrath of their creator by cunningly evading the god's attention. They are indeed exceptionally elusive creatures. While the largest population of Asuras dwell within the vast wilderness of hell, these fiends live and roam anywhere they can make room for themselves in the great beyond. Like some of the other fiends I'm covering today, the Asuras made their way to hell before the Asmodean Exodus and the dominion of the devils in hell. Traditionally, Asuras were formed from the souls of damned petitioners in hell. But with the loss of control over hell to the devils, the Asuras now claim only a small fraction of these petitioners. Typically, they make claim to those rare mortals who follow the Asura Ranas, the greatest of the Asuras. Some of the lesser Asuras, like the lowly Tripurasura, are fashioned instead from extracted fragments of hell by the Asura elders, or the Asurendras. Although few in number, the Asuras are supremely resistant, because they automatically reincarnate when destroyed. In addition to their quintessence, each Asura possesses a distinct and malevolent essence that can survive their demise. When an Asura is slain, this essence journeys towards the nearest Asura Rana to be reincarnated. The duration of this process varies, but it often takes multiples of 7 years. Upon completion of the process, the Asura is typically reborn in a form inferior to its previous one. However, accomplished Asuras, or those who pledge a lifetime of servitude to a Rana, may persuade the Rana to provide them with quintessence, enabling them to reincarnate into more potent forms. Asuras retain their memories across multiple reincarnations, making it nearly impossible to permanently obliterate them. They have an innate resilience that defies annihilation. This is why, after so many years living in the domain of Asmodeus and the well-organized legions of the devils, the Asuras still control their chosen territories. The types of Asuras. Tripurasura. The sly ones, as they are often called, are among the weakest Asuras, manifestations not of divine mistakes, but instead creations of the most powerful of Asuras, exhibiting their loathing of the gods by creating blasphemous mockeries of their creations. A Tripurasura wanders the world, seeking pious mortals to corrupt. When it encounters a promising spellcaster, the Tripurasura presents itself as an apprentice, pilgrim, or other type of curious student eager to learn from the spellcaster. The Tripurasura keeps its true nature and powers hidden, and seeks opportunities to discourage decisions its master might have made in good conscience, steering them towards perversion and heresy instead. Shauquen. Perhaps the most perverse Asuras of them all, Shauquens particularly delight in causing the downfall of those who give them succor, shelter, and most of all, schooling. Many a teacher has come across a Shauquen disguised as a small child with exceptional talents or curiosity and taken them under their wing, only to be beguiled into ruin. This diminutive Asura's cleverness is disproportionate to their size. They ask probing questions and coax their prey into decisions that lead to heresy, furthering the collapse of order and decency. When the world turns on the Shauquen's mentor, the Asura is gone, but not very far, for they love hiding unseen and watching the torment and destruction of their mentors. The Aducite. Twice as disciplined as a monk and twice as deadly as a warrior, an Adukite is the ultimate perversion of duality. Two spiked Asura warriors impaled together to form one ferocious, incredibly efficient killing machine. An Adukite's 2 heads, 2 hearts, and 2 minds rarely work as one, except to maim or kill. Even Adukite's origin contains not 1 but 2 stories. Some believe they were created when 2 godlike brigands attempted to raid a celestial hall and had their bodies crushed together and thrown down from the heavens. Another legend states 2 Asura twins once challenged a great warrior to duel them. When they attacked him together, he was so enraged he slammed one into the other so hard that they were fused together from that day forth. Adukites are among the most elite Asura warriors, making up for what they lack in spellcraft with sheer viciousness and a single-minded pursuit of inflicting pain. Japalizura. Japalizuras have a perverse propensity for extracting embarrassing truths from the universe, using a combination of artifice and prophecy to obscure the truth and corrupt traditional soothsaying. They have a special talent for manipulation, feeding listeners worst impulses and prejudices, telling them what their prey most want to hear and twisting their perceptions to suit Japalizura's own end. All this occurs behind a veil, though, for Japalizuras are grotesque fiends with 6 arms, infinite faces, and an obsession with the profane. The first Japalizura rose from the remains of 3 demigod archers, sons of a goddess who feared their rise to power and slew them. Their merged form was so terrifying that they struck a deal with the powerful Asura Rana to alter their face into something more pleasing. The true cruelty of the enchantment became clear only later. The Japalizura had a new face, but that face transformed into a different one every minute, each more hideous than the last. Nikaramza. Lies, knowledge, and deception are Nikaramza's stock and trade. They are outstanding scholars, with deep and nuanced understandings of religion, philosophy, astrology, and similar subjects. They take particular delight in exploiting the greed and hubris of gullible worshippers, using them to desecrate and destroy their own faith. Even their goal of undermining the holy, Nikaramza's twisted humor knows few bounds, and they prefer to take on the guise of divine messengers with boons to share. Once they find a likely victim or set of victims, they use their vast knowledge of religion to impart contradictory wisdom, leading to the eventual implosion of the faith from heresies of the clergy and congregations themselves. Azurendra. With the notable exception of the unique Asura Ranas, Azurendras are the mightiest of their kind. Although few Azurendras possess anything resembling an extended realm, in hell or elsewhere, these Asuras are the wise ones of Asura kind. Most dwell within shrine-like fortresses in which they can practice their ruinous mysticism and command lesser Asuras who seek their teachings. To most Asuras, an Azurendra's order is something akin to a deific edict. Each Azurendra is a humanoid creature of immense proportions. Their exact appearance varies, just as the appearances of humanoids vary, but all Azurendras have 6 arms and multiple eyes and heads. An Azurendra's body is an example of physical perfection, athletically and gracefully built, but its face has monstrous or inhuman features, such as tusks or mandibles. Few Azurendras were born to their might. They achieved their power only over the course of countless lifetimes spent as lesser Asuras. Throughout each incarnation, these tenacious Asuras sought unity with some concept of destruction. Eventually, through dark meditation and vile action, the Asuras ascended to a state of being united with some aspect of unmaking. They also gained power over their own being and slowly reshaped themselves into a vision of their perfect selves, instruments of annihilation ideally suited to fell gods and their divine works. Among the most famous Azurendras in Galarian was the corrupting Azurendra Parveen, a being I discuss at great length in my Western Wangi Expanse deep dive video. The Asura Ranas. Andak the Dismembered. Andak the Dismembered is a grisly sight, a tortured soul whose limbs have been hewn into multiple pieces and reattached awkwardly and randomly. His priests practice self-mutilation, especially by ritualistically scraping painful scratches and welts along the joints of their limbs. They may seek to improve upon their physical form through injury, followed by magical but hideous regeneration. Boga the Treasurer. Once on the material world, in the aftermath of the rampage of a spawn of Rovagug known as Kothogaz, Boga looted hundreds of abandoned monasteries and temples. After a millennium meditating upon the stolen goods, she attained perfection and came to be known as the Treasurer. She appears as a beautiful but faceless woman made of gold and gems. Her faithful spend hours recording reasons they deserve another's treasured heirloom and devising ways to steal such items as a form of veneration to the demigoddess of thieves. Chugara, the guru of butchers. Chugara appears as an obese, fiendish butcher who wears a blood-stained leather apron and carries a cleaver in each hand. Those who fall to his axes find portions of their flesh temporarily added to his body. His followers show their devotion by butchering animals and crafting leather aprons from their hides. A common trait among his followers is hard, calloused skin that does not bleed, even when struck with sharp weapons. Chupur Vagasti, Lady of Poison Mist. The Asura of Poisons brings a cloying miasma of lung-scarring toxic fumes wherever she travels. She is said to have been born from a spurned deity's wrath that resulted in an entire world being shrouded in poison cloud. Her faithful immerse themselves with venomous gases and meditate in toxic chambers. Gavidia the Numberless. Gavidia is a cloaked figure who has no fewer than 6 faces, each forming from folds on his scalp before gravitating towards the center of his head and competing to be eaten by his smiling mouth. His cult establishes false prophets who undermine religions with apostasy and internecine conflict before spreading like viruses to other faiths. Haidim of the Eternal Fast. Haidim appears as an emaciated man with a face on the front and on the back of his head. Each of his arms end in a pair of hands that separate at the wrists and bend in opposite directions. He was born from the ravenous hunger of a nation, where a fickle god accidentally created a devastating famine. His faithful show their devotion to him by consuming the pages out of other holy books. Yoramval, with a mouthful of boulders. Yoramval suffered countless deaths via falls, premature burials, and rock slides, before finally being reborn as Yoramval with a mouthful of boulders. He appears as a lumbering colossus of stone, and he is capable of spitting jagged rocks from his toothless maw. His most fanatical and ecstatic followers joyfully bury themselves alive in order to acquire visions from Yoramval. Meha, Father of False Worlds. Meha doesn't reside in Hell, but has instead gathered a number of abandoned demiplanes into an astral constellation known as the Haven of Lost Hope. He appears as a night-black serpent, with a row of 13 whispering faces along his belly. His priests may perform the most depraved devotion of all, donning the guises of goodly priests and then distributing poisoned food to the poor. Onamali, the Twice Pure. Once the herald of the departed goddess of beauty, Onamali tore herself in half in a vain attempt to match impossible expectations and fled screaming incoherently. Onamali is known as the Twice Pure, and her 2 halves compete with one another to this day, contemplating the paradoxes of competing divine truths. Her followers are known to use cosmetic scarification or other means to decorate the 2 sides of their face and body differently from each other. Rahu the Sun Eater. Rahu appears as the severed head of an immense serpent, yet he remains capable of supernatural flight. His cult sees his work in every execution and every eclipse, viewing both as expressions of gluttony for life and light. In order to show their devotion to Rahu, they behead serpents and offer the heads to the rising sun. Ritara, Serpent of the Eastern Eye. Ritara appears as a 4-headed snake with 3 eyes on each face. Through her 3rd eye, she is said to be able to see the most frightening memories of those she meets, so that she may cause those fears to be relived. Her followers embrace terror, ritually frightening themselves by confronting their greatest fears. Tarakson, Awakener of Wrath. The Awakener of Wrath is born in the dreaming minds of those whose anger has no outlet, particularly those who have been imprisoned or oppressed to the point of losing hope. He appears as a headless 4-armed man, countless screaming faces swirl in the roiling cloud of black smoke spewing from the ragged stump of his neck. His faithful bind themselves tightly with cords of woven hair and enter into an anger-filled dream, which leaves them strangely rested, despite screaming through so much of the night. Zurapadin, the beast who waits in smoke. Zurapadin revels in any act of fiery purification performed for misguided reasons. He occasionally leaves the immense hellfire volcano he calls home in order to leap out from pyres and set fire to temples run by self-important acolytes. His disciples steal items of monetary or sentimental value from others to ritualistically burn them in bonfires. The Divs. Although most natives of the Outer Planes are post-mortal forms made from the soul stuff of creatures that hail from the prime material universe, there are a few with a slightly different origin. Just like the humanoids of the material universe, the creatures of the elemental planes, especially the genies, are actually on their first life as well, and when they die, their souls are also judged by Pharasma, and their spirits move on to the outer planes. Divs are formed exclusively from evil elemental creatures, particularly evil genies. They are native to Abaddon, and they share their home with the demons there, and though they are greatly outnumbered, they have been able to hold their territory through an ancient bargain made by their eldest god Ahriman and the 4 horsemen. Divs share common traits that differentiate them from other outsiders, such as telepathy and genie-like mastery over various elements. At the apex of the Div hierarchy stands Ahriman himself, the high god of the Divs. And because Ahriman does not share power uniquely among the fiends of the great beyond, no other Divs with true deific powers are commonly known to exist. Should any Div rise to such power, then Ahriman would assume them to be a threat and destroy them. However, he does make an exception for the Aqvan princes, each of which is dedicated to one of the elemental genie types, which in turn grants them near-deific powers in their own right. The types of Div. Dorus. Though a lesser Div, these are frightening creatures, and appear as floating heads adorned with writhing hair, bestial teeth, and enormous horns. They serve their more powerful brethren as messengers and spies. These deceivers whisper fetid lies, sowing dark and dread inspiration into foolish mortal ears. Dorus serve as the spies and messengers of the Divs. With silver tongues and dark motives, they often pledge themselves to vainglorious and deluded spellcasters who they ply with wild conspiracies and rumors of deception among friends and foes alike. Agash. These odd cyclopean hoofed creatures are walking embodiments of curses, misfortune, and the evil eye. Agashes wander the deserts of the material plane, searching out the arrogant, charming, and persuasive to humiliate and undermine them. Agashes are often mistaken for some strange form of hag. Unlike those creatures, they are masters of curses. Pyrakas. Often charming and sometimes even seductive, Pyrakas worm their way into mortal relationships, subtly destroying the ties of friendship and love through emotional and physical corruption. Pyrakas appear as beautiful blue-skinned humanoids, spotted with large rashes and boils, but they rarely take on their true forms. Instead, they adopt shapes that attract just enough attention for them to worm their way into the confidence of those they wish to torment and corrupt. Sepids. Sepids are the brutal warlords of the Divs, delighting in violence against mortals and their own particular flavor of vengeance. Inveterate liars, Sepids can't help but spout the most outrageous lies, and their form and nature represent the power of falsehoods to snowball into violence that can cost countless lives. Among mortals, they rally troops to incite rebellion, war, and other forms of carnage, savoring mortals who slaughter each other. These giant beings usually stand around 13 feet tall. They wade through battlefields, seeking out heroes and generals, rejoicing maniacally as they cut down their foes. Aqvans. Aqvans are the most powerful form of Div. Their twisted minds bend towards desolation, ruin, and blasphemy, and their hatred of beings renowned for inspiring art and wonder knows few equals. Whereas most Divs turn their cruelty and vengefulness upon mortals, Aqvans place special emphasis on the genie kind they descended from. Aqvans seek out wonders to destroy, monuments from lost ages that have long inspired awe and pride, or beings and establishments said to be invincible. These Divs also go out of their way to hunt, destroy, and consume any genie they encounter. While wise enough to not waste their lives in combat against foes they cannot overpower, Aqvans will still seek to bring low any such opponents, if not by brute strength, then by guile. As Aqvans go through their existence slaying mortals and genies, many gravitate towards one of the races of genie kind, targeting members of that race with particular passion. Over ages of service, Aqvans who prove especially lethal in slaughtering genies garner the attention of Ahriman, who blesses such Divs with increased power, transforming them into the Aqvan princes. There are 5 Aqvan princes. The Prince of Crumbling Earth is the slayer of Shaitans. The Prince of Dying Embers is the slayer of Ifrit. The Prince of Gasping Wind is the slayer of Jinn. The Prince of Thirsty Sea is the slayer of Marids, and finally the Prince of the Unbalanced Soul is the slayer of Jani, those rare genies who are composed of a conflux of elements. Ahriman. Ahriman, the shadow of the first genies, is one of the most powerful and malevolent fiends, a terrible creature that even the 4 horsemen thought better than to fight directly. He seeks to twist the minds of mortals through the spread of corrupting thoughts. While he is a being of destruction, his goal is not limited to catastrophe or physical devastation alone. Ahriman takes pleasure in disrupting mortal governments, sowing divisions in religions, and breaking familial or clan bonds by promoting poor choices and self-destructive behavior. Ahriman rules over the Divs from his throne in the realm of Ahrimanabad, situated at the top of Mount Kaf on the edge of Abaddon. At least one permanent extraplanar portal connects this realm to the House of Oblivion in central Thuvia and Golarion, and there may be other portals linking to additional monuments dedicated to Ahriman on different worlds. While Ahrimanabad is a relatively small realm, the demons of Abaddon generally leave the Divs and their lord to their own devices. Ahriman manifests as a bestial fiend, with clawed hands resembling a tiger and taloned feet reminiscent of a vulture, Serpents covered in oily skin slither through his scarred black flesh, infecting both their host and those nearby with deadly venoms. Ahriman's tiger-like face is crowned with horns, inscribed with ancient curses, and beyond his great maw filled with soul-rending fangs lies a gateway to oblivion itself. Ancient and patient as he is vicious, he is an embodiment of ancient evil, seeking to gradually bring about the dissolution of the world, one failure at a time. A scheming god, Ahriman accepts the worship of evil mortals, despite his and his minions' disdain for such beings. Clerics of Ahriman are either nihilists or deluded cultists who actively work to corrupt others, sow misfortune, and especially to dismantle the accomplishments of genie kind. The most widespread cultists of Ahriman are known as the Usage. These dangerous spellcasters strive to spread ruin and disrupt societal bonds. Originating in the Padishah Empire of Kalesh many years ago, Usage cabals have since spread throughout Golarion, operating with great secrecy and subtlety. Usage members often strive to attain positions of power to corrode systems from within. Exceptionally skilled Usage have even ascended to national leadership roles or posed as priests of rival religions, using their positions to taint and annihilate the virtues that those nations or religions hold dear. Qlippoths. Demons were not the first inhabitants of the Abyss. In the earliest prehistory of the Great Beyond, before humanity rose from barbarism, before the Asmodean Exodus, before the gods even began to pay attention to the world of Golarion, the Abyss was populated by the primordial Qlippoths. These beings were born from the essence of the Abyss itself, inhuman monstrosities of pure chaos and malice. According to the Proteans, who were the native denizens of the Maelstrom and the oldest inhabitants of the Outer Sphere, the Qlippoths already existed when the Abyss first opened to the rest of the Great Beyond. Upon discovering them, the Proteans became intensely interested in the Qlippoths. Eventually, these first encounters led to a mighty war, which would spread out of the Abyss into the Maelstrom itself. This conflict distracted the chaotic Proteans to such a degree that order began to assert itself throughout the Great Beyond, leading to the formation of such planes as Hell, Heaven, and Axis. For untold ages, the Qlippoths were the unquestioned masters of the Abyss. Then, as I recounted in my demons video, a demon from Abaddon came to the Abyss and began experimenting on the abyssal larva. They produced the first abyssal demon, and the rest is history. The demons quickly learned how to create more of their kind from the abundant larvae born of the corrupt mortal souls that had been making their way to the Abyss since time immemorial. The Abyss was conquered, and the Qlippoths were pushed out into the oldest and darkest corners of their realm. The types of Qlippoths. Sith-Nigots. The Sith-Nigot is a foul fungal parasite that grows and thrives in the corpses of small creatures. It wears these bodies like a suit, but also adjusts and tailors the fleshy covering to suit its needs, and the body ends up looking as alien as anything else spawned from the abyssal depths. The Sith-Nigot's most identifying feature is the long stalk of fungal matter that extends from the creature's body, ending in a surprisingly strong set of fanged jaws. Shogti. Shogti travel to other planes in roving bands to capture and charm victims, bringing them back to the Abyss, where they are enslaved for unknown but no doubt insidiously evil purposes. These squid-like Qlippoths have slick blue skin and 4 suckered tentacles that end in dexterous pincers. In addition to lamprey-like mouths at the base of their body, each has a secondary maw in the middle of its forehead that stretches from behind its 2 bulging eyes to the back of its head. Nyogoth. Little more than a coiled mass of intestines encircled by a massive gaping maw, this Qlippoth is an abyssal scavenger, subsisting on the filth and leftovers of demons and Qlippoths alike, although it relishes any opportunity to consume living prey. Despite this seemingly lowly role in the abyssal ecosystem, a Nyogoth is a far from stupid beast and can orchestrate cunning ambushes to secure its next meal. Chernobyl. The Chernobyl infects all creatures it encounters with itself, spreading pain and calamity wherever it flops and writhes. Resembling tumor-like growths of oily blackness, this vile monstrosity has numerous muscular tentacles, a single glaring baleful eye, and a drooling toothy maw in the middle of its body. Ognagar. The brutish and gluttonous Ognagars live to feast, preferably on rotten flesh, but these days, when possible, on demon flesh. But to them, strangely, the greatest delicacy is the flesh of other Ognagars. Ognagars have spider-like legs with leathery membranes like a bat's wings, and 3 tails ending in hooked claws, perfect for slicing flesh. Thulgants. Although they spend most of their time hunting and battling demons for control of the Abyss, the Thulgants amuse themselves with a variety of diversions, such as maintaining galleries of petrified mortals or building massive hive-like lairs filled with enslaved minions. Each of these Qlippoths is a horrific tangle of limbs, with spider-like legs, writhing tentacles, and 3 scorpion-like stingers. The Qlippoth Lords. Chavasvug. Chavasvug manifests as a towering mass of fire-drooling digestive organs, stumbling and crawling on impossibly long, thin legs. The target of his great hatred is not mortal life, but the demonic legions. He frequently invades demonic realms with armies of minions, waging war with the knowledge that if destroyed he can regenerate a new body from the thousands of seething lakes of bile hidden in his lair. Isf-aun Vuln. Isf-aun Vuln, one of the most intelligent and subversive Qlippoth Lords, is a monstrous soul parasite. When she occasionally manifests outside a hideously mutated host body, she takes the form of mist-shrouded, dripping tendrils, entangled around a fanged anemone. Isf-aun Vuln enjoys using humanoid hosts to lead nations to their self-destructive ends through war and decadence. War-woong. War-woong is a pallid and poisonous aquatic fungoid horror, with eyes and gasping throats, and floating roots that dangle for miles like the twitching tendrils of a massive jellyfish. Sith-Visug is believed to have been born from one of War-woong's blister wombs. It is said that a new and repulsive blister womb is growing upon War-woong's flank, the largest one yet, and likely to grow into a new nascent deity. Shigareb. Shigareb is a gigantic creature resembling a drider with multiple arms and a split face. She has mastered arcane magic and serves as a messenger for other Qlippoth Lords. Often associated with Qlippoth invasions of material plane worlds, Shigareb has long crusaded alongside the Qlippoths to reclaim abyssal realms currently held by demon lords. Whenever she leads these invasions, she brings the influence of the deep abyss, causing the areas she traverses to twist and warp. Thuskchoon. Thuskchoon is an immense tower of clattering limbs and mouths, slithering upon a glistening slug-like body. It represents an almost mindless force of relentless devastation and consumption. Its worshippers expect little from Thuskchoon, leading it from world to world in the belief that the wake of destruction it leaves behind holds the secrets to great power. Yamasoth. Yamasoth, known as the Polymorph Plague, is a peculiar creature. Its stony body resembles a nightmarish octopus with numerous tentacles, partially connected by a leathery web. Each tentacle possesses a different method of inflicting pain, be it blades, claws, pincers, or serpent heads. Yamasoth's face consists of a massive maw filled with teeth and stinging tongues, surrounded by several eyes. One eye, hidden deep in its throat, remains closed except during combat, when Yamasoth can open it to unleash a terrible gaze weapon that transforms enemies into feral monsters. Yamasoth rules over a vast kingdom in the cavern realm of Secatar Seractus, populated entirely by the grotesque results of his vile experiments. Finally, I should mention one last thing about the great surviving gods of the Qlippoths. The greatest among their number was an entity you already know, Rovagug. That's right, the rough beast of Galarian, bound within the center of the world, was a Qlippoth once. For more details on Rovagug, please see my Infernal Gods video series.